Sweetheart, it's hard enough for you having two of your kids as suspects. The last thing I want you to do is have to worry about me. Doc. Listen. Sammy is your daughter. Rex is your son. Now, my son is living in Nicole and Victor's house. Kate's my employee, but Lucas is Will's father, and Tony's my half-brother. And, honey, they are all suspects. I pray to God it's not. But at this point, that doesn't seem very likely. So all I can do is try to stop the killing by bringing this person to justice.
And so are the days of our lives if we are conscious to the world around us and ourselves. True consciousness. I've talked about it many times. You're not going to find it in a book. You're not going to find it in a man. You're not going to find it in a woman. But you will find it in a man himself. He will find it in himself, and a woman would find it in herself. So we all will find it in ourselves. To be conscious about the things we do for ourselves and the things that we allow ourselves to participate in and the food that we eat. Because, like they say, if you're not paying attention to what we put in our bodies, then it may just end up being dangerous to our health. Weight will gain because we're not consciously eating. We're unconsciously, because we live in an unconscious world where things unconsciously go into the mind, into that unconscious place, and we act upon the unthought, unconscious thinking. So let's get into it today, because today I'm going to be talking about the FDA. Um, you wouldn't need the FDA or anything else if it wasn't for us being um, patriots to grocery stores, convenience stores, pharmacies. Just imagine if you grew your own foods, you really wouldn't have no use for the FDA or going and purchasing things from other people like that on a grand scale from corporations, let's say, because corporations, FDA regulate these corporations. So we're going to look at how living holistically and growing your own food is it's more simple than dealing with the grocery stores and the pharmacies, and all of that stuff can get expensive. Not only expensive, but they work hand in hand. They all work hand in hand. Where if we grow our own fruits and vegetables, we know exactly that it's fresh. We know, for one thing, it's fresh, you know, and we know that we didn't have to process it. So let's and same thing with our medicines. You eat good, you don't have to worry about medicine. But you see how already works hand in hand. They work together. You can't have love without the marriage, right? You can't have marriage without the love, right? Okay. Well, let's get into this first article, and then we'll look at a video. 9 disgusting things that the FDA allows in your food, because they love to kill us slowly. They love to kill us slowly. That was the first what they call it. I didn't forgot the name. I forgot the word now. Conspiracy, conspired. That's what they conspired against us on first. That's why America has the most unhealthy diet, because our restaurants are not good for us. Our grocery stores are not good for us. The only way that you can guarantee a healthy meal for you and your family without getting sick is pretty much have your own. So it says here, that's gross. Let's get into it. It's probably a bad idea to scroll through Food and Drug Administration's defect levels handbook before a meal. The document lists the allowable limits on defects in more than 100 foods, highlighting exactly how much rodent poop is allowed in your cocoa beans. Cocoa beans, okay? Up to 10 milligrams per pound. How many insects heads it's okay to find in the fig paste in your cookies? Ew. I didn't know that was I didn't know that was what it was. I didn't know it was ant heads in my fig Newton cookies. Up to 13 in every 3.5 ounces. And how many maggots can be tunneling in your tomatoes? According to the FDA, these food defects are part of the normal process of growing and processing food. Their normal process, not on. And they present no health hazard as long as they remain below the action levels listed. Okay, let's see this full thing here. Okay. What's in your food? A peek under the cover of the FDA's handbook. It's a read that's not safe for the squeamish. Look at that corn with the little porcelain mice on it. The Food and Drug Administration, FDA's defect level handbook, vividly details the imperfection that the agency allows in the foods we eat. Altogether, the FDA lists 179 different defects that can pop up in various foods, such as mold and insect body parts, out of sheer morbid fascination. Live Science totaled up all of the different types of defects listed to see which ones are the most commonly allowed in our foods and what types of defects we are perhaps less likely to encounter. The most common food defect was insect related, according to our analysts. The handbook lists a total of 71 insect linked defects, which range from plain old whole insects found in canned and frozen berries and cornmeal to insect parts found in ground oregano and chocolate. Now, oregano is a very, very good herb. It works for all kinds of elements. So I do not want ground up oregano with something in it. I like to have my oregano fresh. Most of the time I get it in oil form. It's kind of a little bit hard to deal with when it's in oil form because it's very strong, but it gets the job done to whatever you're trying to knock out, whatever you're dealing with. And I usually mix it with water. But I prefer the oil because, like they just now telling us, they might have insect in your oregano and chocolate as well. And insect damage, such as insect damaged wheat kernels, mouse poop, rat hair. Here are the defects the FDA allows in the food. This is why the food is dangerous a lot of times. This is why people get sick. You know, this kills slowly, a slow process of poisoning us. You know, I haven't even got to where they allow arsenic or whatever they call it in certain things. But this is real. Insects of various types and life stages are listed as well, including larvae and sweet canned corn and mites and frozen broccoli. Wow. Interesting. In addition, fruit flies receive their own mentions in the FDA's handbook. 4 types of food, specifically tomato cans. Tomato products may contain fruit fly eggs or fruit fly magnets. Pizza sauce, for example, can contain up to 30 fruit fly eggs per 100 grams. And canned tomatoes can contain up to 10 eggs per 500 grams. The second most common food defect was mold, which is mentioned 33 times on its own in the handbook. In some instances, a defect is listed as a combination of insects and mold or insect damage and mold. In most foods, mold only presents an aesthetic problem. Now, okay, which the FDA defines as offensive to the senses. This is the case for mold that is found. For example, various tomato products, including sauce, ketchup, and tomato juice. However, mold in allspice, ground red pepper, ground paprika, cocoa beans, and green coffee beans can be harmful if there's too much of it because the types of mold that grow in these foods can produce chemicals called mycotoxins that can make a person sick. Another common unavoidable defect is rodent filth, or more specifically, rodent hairs, which receives 23 mentions in the handbook. These hairs may pop up in a wide variety of spices, including ground nutmeg, ground marjoram, and ground thyme. Hold on. Let me go check my food real quick, guys. Let me put some music on for you guys while I'm waiting. All right, I'm back. Let's finish this grotesque story. So, my question is, what makes us trust? What makes us trust? As Black people, what makes us so trusting? Or do we feel like we have no choice of the matter? We do have a lot of alternatives. You know, you can stop trusting and hold people accountable. It's one thing we could do. Like just doing this video is holding them accountable. But I just realized something about myself. I don't like to not hold people accountable. And I think in my life, I pretty much went about holding people accountable. But we all have family members who ended up getting high blood pressure, diabetes, cancer, all of these things slowly creeping up. And then they want to say it's hereditary. It's hereditary. I don't think so. But let's continue on. Another common unavoidable defect is rodent filth, or more specifically, rodent hairs, which receive 23 mentions in the handbook. These hairs, I've already read that, didn't I? May pop up in a wide variety of spices, including ground nutmeg, ground marjoram, and ground thyme. You may also find several hairs in your peanut butter or popcorn. I hardly eat, like, definitely no peanut butter. Popcorn I did, but I haven't lately. Perhaps the ickiest defect, mammalian excreta, was the fourth most commonly mentioned defect in the handbook. Mammalian excreta, or animal poop, was mentioned 15 times in the handbook. Spices were once again a common food in which the FDA allows this defect. However, in 14 out of 15 possible foods where you may find poop, the poop only presents an aesthetic problem. However, animal poop in black and white whole pepper kernels may also contain salmonella. According to the FDA, other icky defects, though less common, include parasites. These mentions rot for four mentions, including canned plums and potato chips. Mildew found in canned greens and foreign matter. Three mentions, including black pepper, sesame seeds, and mace, which is similar to nutmeg. The FDA defines foreign matter as objectable matter, such as sticks, stones, burlap, bagging, cigarette butts. What? Say it ain't so. Certain types of parasites are permitted in foods such as fish. Freshwater herring can contain up to 60 parasite cysts per 100 fish, and redfish and ocean perch can contain copepods. The FDA's limit in this case is 3% of the lets examined contain one or more copepods, accompanied by pus pockets. Oh, I'm good with fasting until I get this greenhouse. I'm good with fasting. And I never like grocery shopping. It's just, and some defects, though not particularly icky, may still give you pause. Pits, for example, were listed 5 times in the handbook, and while they don't sound icky compared to with insects or poop, people who chomp down on unexpected dates or olive pit injured their mouths or teeth. How is that? Pit injury, their mouth or tooth. Olive pit injury, it's supposed to be, or olive pit injures their mouth or teeth. The FDA permits up to 2 pits and 100 pitted dates and allows up to 1.3% of supposedly pitted olives to have pits. This article was done, I guess Sarah G. Miller did this. She did this article. This was a good article because it clued us in on a lot of stuff here. We're going to talk about this. When is this? Friday the 3rd, the second full moon. Hey, let's just get off topic. Let's look at this. I'm supposed to hear a sound.
Thus acted like a blue filter.
Okay, do I have to do it?
People also saw blue-colored moon.
Okay.
Watch out for the blue moon. Presented by Science at NASA. When someone says once in a blue moon, you know what they mean. Rare, seldom, even absurd. This year it means August 31st. For the second time this month, the moon is about to become full. There was one full moon on August 1st, and now a second is coming on August 31st. According to modern folklore, whenever there are 2 full moons in a calendar month, the second one is blue. Cue up the Elvis records. In song and literature, blue moons have long symbolized lost love and melancholy. Elvis set the standard for lunar heartbreak in his 1956 pop hit, Blue Moon. But will the moody moon of August 31st actually turn blue? Probably not. Most blue moons look pale gray and white, indistinguishable from any other moon you've ever seen. Squeezing a second full moon into a calendar month doesn't change the physical properties of the moon itself, so its color remains the same.
I sure would like to see it blue, but I'll continue back to this. Let's go down here. I can come back to this. Let's do the next article. The next article. While I'm in transition, I'll just let y'all play the days of my life.
Hey guys, I know it's a weird time right now. A lot of us have been stuck at home for a bit, some voluntarily, some not. And you can't check social media or turn on a TV without seeing something about a horrifying global pandemic. Whether you think quarantines and closures are an overreaction or not, I think everyone of every political persuasion can agree on at least one thing. Our government has not handled this COVID-19 thing very well. For weeks, doctors in the US weren't allowed to test patients for the virus at all. Then, the only tests available were from the CDC that took a week to get results. And many of those tests turned out to be faulty. Not only did FDA regulations prohibit private labs in the US from developing their own tests, they barred unapproved tests that were already successfully in use in other countries from being imported. The first major outbreak in Washington was discovered only after a Seattle lab decided to ignore the regulations and run their own tests in defiance of the FDA. Fortunately, the government did eventually drop their prohibition on private labs developing their own tests, which are much faster and, work. But there were still a number of regulations imposed by the FDA and other agencies that stood in the way of rapid progress in fighting the disease, like prohibiting at-home testing and restricting companies like Tesla, Ford, and GM from producing and selling ventilators, even though they'd offered to do so. These problems have come as a surprise to a lot of people in the US, but they really shouldn't. The FDA has a long history of slowing the progress of innovation in healthcare. And since you're probably stuck at home, instead of rewatching Outbreak or Contagion for the 13th time, I'd like to direct your attention to a much better movie on Netflix that actually addresses some of the underlying problems our country is facing right now: Dallas Buyers Club. Stick around for this short edition of Out of Frame. Dallas Buyers Club was released in 2013 and tells the mostly true story of Ron Woodruff, played by Matthew McConaughey. If you haven't seen it, go ahead and do that, then come back to this video, because I'm going to be spoiling some key plot points. Feel free to subscribe and hit that bell icon while we wait. In 1985, Ron Woodruff was diagnosed not just with HIV, but full-blown AIDS. At the time, HIV and AIDS were not well understood by the American public. Most people considered it a gay disease and didn't think it was a problem even worthy of serious attention. Thanks to a deadly combination of ignorance, anti-gay sentiment, and the novelty of the disease itself, drugs that could treat HIV were barely available anywhere. AIDS was spreading rapidly, with nothing to stop it or help those who got it. When Ron got the news, his prognosis wasn't good. He had just 30 days left to live. But there was a sliver of hope. Researchers at the National Cancer Institute had just proposed a breakthrough treatment for HIV using the antiretroviral drug azithromycin, or AZT. Unfortunately, in 1985, AZT was just starting FDA-required human trials. And while we all know that rigorous testing is super important, what most people don't realize is that the nature of the FDA process takes a really, really long time. And for most medical R&D companies, navigating the bureaucracy can cost over $1 billion per drug. So even fast-tracked, it would still take over 2 years for the AZT trials to be completed, and only then could it have been submitted for approval in the US. Who knows how much longer that would take? Ron's doctor's only recommendation is to go to a support group for other AIDS patients condemned to die.
Screw the FDA. I'm going to DOA.
The first act of Dallas Buyers Club is really hard to watch. Reeling from his diagnosis and being rejected by his former rodeo cowboy friends, Ron had nothing left but to hustle. He makes a deal with an orderly at the hospital to steal AZT from the trial. Once that gets cut off, he goes to an unlicensed doctor in Mexico. After a couple months of fairly successful treatment, he and the doctor set up a deal to smuggle unapproved drugs into the US and sell them to other desperate HIV patients. This eventually leads to creating the Buyers Club in Dallas. Ron isn't actually selling the drugs and supplements. He's selling a club membership. And club members just happen to get access to these treatments as a perk. Unfortunately for Ron and his club members, he keeps bumping up against the FDA and their enlisted help, the DEA and the IRS. Ron is fined, his medicine is confiscated, he's threatened with arrest. Ron attempts to fight back, filing a restraining order against the FDA. That doesn't work. He sues the agency for denying him his right to treatment. That fails too, even though the judge agrees that the FDA's behavior is morally reprehensible. Ron just wanted to survive and believed that all people have a right to try risky treatments when the alternative is certain death. We see this play out over and over in real life. People with conditions and diseases like HIV, cancer, autoimmune disorders, and more suffer needlessly because the FDA won't approve drugs that have been used in other countries for years. People who use medical marijuana and psychedelics to treat physical and psychological problems understand the obstacles the FDA and other government agencies put in the way of drug research and approval, in spite of the fact that the federal government actually holds patents on a lot of those treatments. It even affects people who just want to drink the milk they want to drink. Right now, places like New York City are seeing firsthand how FDA restrictions that prevent companies from urgently importing and producing much needed medical supplies like ventilators, masks, and other protective gear can cause really serious problems. And it doesn't stop with the FDA. We've all talked a lot lately about overloaded hospitals and our limited capacity to treat COVID-19 patients. But what most people don't know is that the government and the American Medical Association limits the number of doctors we train, and we've known for years that we would face a real shortage in healthcare providers, something we really don't need right now. Worse still, most cities have what's called Certificate of Need laws that prevent the development and construction of new hospitals. Con laws allow other hospitals and clinics in certain areas to decide whether their potential competitors can expand their capabilities or enter the market at all. Contrary to popular belief, healthcare in America is far, far from a free market. And it's precisely that bureaucratic centralized control and the regulatory restrictions that are killing us right now, just like they did in the 80s during the AIDS epidemic. Oh, and by the way, thanks to illegally acquiring AZT, Ron Woodruff beat his 30-day prognosis by 7 years. And today, the drug is approved and used in AIDS treatment and prevention all over the world. The good news is that finally, some of these rules are being lifted, if only temporarily in some cases, allowing people to get what they need when they actually need it. If you're searching for silver linings right now, it could be that after this is all over, maybe, just maybe, more people realize how involved government at all levels already is in their everyday lives, health, and well-being, and reject plans to expand its role in the future. We need life-saving medicine and medical technology right now, and the best way to incentivize rapid innovation, production, and distribution is by allowing entrepreneurs to do what they do best. But to do that, we have to reduce the artificial barriers, price controls, and top-down political authority in the healthcare system. The lessons of economics aren't magically suspended in life or death situations. To the contrary, learning them now is more important than ever. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this short edition of Out of Frame. I know this one was a little different than usual, so be sure to let me know.
All right, family. Oh, hold on. And basically, what I am trying to say about FDA, many of you already know that we could start there and use this as use the fact that they come across like they are coming to put regulations to protect the American citizens when there really aren't. Um, do we need this kind of protection? Do we need to trust anyone? I would say no. You should never trust anyone with your well-being, because then it escalate from your trust to control, to control. And I think to curb this, you must be self-sufficient. And you know, this is part of big government, right? So self-sufficiency, like growing our own foods, depending on knowing what we put in our bodies and what we're uh instead of letting strange people regulate that, and strange people make process our foods, you know us being able to do it ourselves will cut out a lot of our uh health issues and premature deaths. So with that said, family, stay conscious and know know what is right for you. And liberation is right around the corner, because it starts with you. It starts in your mind. It starts when you get the clock ticking to recognizing that money was a tool, and it comes, yeah, and it goes. But what is real? We got to think about what is real. And what is real never goes. It's always there, and it continues to supply you with abundance. So, with that said, family, true love, real peace, the higher self within our soul. Till next time, have a lovely evening.